Hello everybody on this wet miserable day in the UK. Since most of my friends are in the US, it seems, which is lovely, nice warm cosy US, I'm going to talk about a tradition in the UK called afternoon tea. We're going to have some fun today. I think it's about time. My last video was a bit profound and I was in a bit of a state. So I've decided we're going to have a bit of a laugh and some pleasure. We need pleasure. And I can't go out for afternoon tea because all the tea shops are closed down, but it is my very favourite pastime. The title is called The Movable Feast. Is by a book by Ernest Hemmingway, when he talks about pleasure that we can have from eating certain foods, our favourite foods. No matter what they are, we get this intense pleasure which stays with us, and we can recapture that. In fact, there was a passage read out in the film City of Angels about how he enjoyed his oysters and his wine. Well, I don't enjoy oysters, but I do love cake. Cake is my very favourite thing, and so I'm going to talk about two different occasions when I had such pleasure. I love afternoon tea, and I've been for so many, some with my daughter down in the West Country, but these are two of my favourite ones that happened some years ago, and it was just so beautiful. And when I get very down like today, I think, gosh, remember that time I had afternoon tea, and it comes flooding back. The pleasure, the feeling comes flooding back. So I think it's also a question of calling in the memories when we're going through these difficult times, calling in the memories of a good day, no matter what it was, dancing, singing, sitting by the beach, something that's really brought us a lot of pleasure. So the first one I'm going to talk about was Pretty Polly. There's a Pretty Polly Cafe in Avebury. Avebury's just outside of Bristol in Wiltshire actually, and it's a bit like Stonehenge. It's a very sacred place with standing stones, and I love Avebury. It's ancient. I think it's even older than Stonehenge, and there's not much there. There's no cafe there on the site itself. Well, there wasn't when I was there, and I used to love going for the day out, standing by the stones and the fresh air and so forth, and then afterwards going for tea at the Pretty Polly. The Pretty Polly, I doubt it's still there actually. It's a big tea shop, oak beams, and all the girls were dressed in Victorian costumes. It was beautiful, and the tea, well, you could die for it. It had the cake plates, tiers of plates, and the cakes were difficult to choose which one you wanted. And of course, afternoon tea has to be special cups and saucers, porcelain probably. No mugs with handles and pictures on. Porcelain cups and saucers and plates, tablecloth, linen tablecloth, and these plates, cake plates, fantastic. So that was one of my very favourite times, and I stayed in a hotel there once. That was another experience I won't talk about today, but I was chatted up. Very nice man who wanted to take me out for tea. That's a pleasure I would love to have. Tea, being taken out for tea by a handsome young man who's going to pay for it. I don't think that's ever happened actually, though it did happen with a friend of mine a couple of years ago who decided he owed me a tea. But the Pretty Polly was really one of my favourites. Another afternoon tea was when my daughter was living in this country, and I belonged to something called the Tea Club. And it was a tea club that used to sell special teas, and they had events and occasions, festivals and so forth. And we went, it was actually in London, a very special upmarket Cafe Royale, very expensive, and the tea I think was about 20 quid in those days, which now will be a lot more. And I met her in London, and we went to the Cafe Royale for our afternoon tea. And that was a real occasion because of course that cost a lot of money, and it seemed like every type of tea has a special type of cup to go with it, and there are many types of tea, so I think there are about 3 or 4 that we had. Cakes of course on the centrepiece, special plate, cups and saucers, and it was just a magical affair really. I should never forget it. I've got a picture. If I was clever enough to download pictures, I would have put that on, but I haven't yet learned how to do that. But that was many years ago, and we had a fit of the giggles. Now I'm going to tell you this. I think you'll know what I mean when I tell you about it, because it was really, there were big round tables. I suppose there's about 200 or 300 people there probably, and during the afternoon session with lovely cups of tea, finished our tea, and then there was the man at the top table, and he was giving a talk. I think we felt he'd been drinking, and he was talking about the tea pluckers in India. Well, when he said this, I could see my daughter was shaking. You know, she was trying to stifle her giggles. I thought I daren't look at her because it was a quiet talk. You know, we're supposed to be paying lots of attention. But we both were really, in a way, not hoping, but wondering if he'd, you know, slipped the word, and in the middle of this very posh afternoon tea, he wasn't actually swaying, but you could see he'd been drinking. I thought, that's a difficult word at the best of times. So we sat there after our tea having this giggle, and I've never forgotten it. So when I get really down, that's something I do remember and think of, and especially with her, because she's not here now. But to draw on these memories, to bring pleasure, and you see I'm laughing now thinking about it. Just going to check the time, dear ones. 6 minutes. I seem to always stop at about 6 minutes, don't I? Which is quite odd, really. So, I don't know. I've got lots of teas I could talk about. One in Bath is lovely. A Bath in Bristol, that's in the West Country. Oh, and Two Toads. The tea shops always seem to have the very strange names. Well, of course, you remember them, don't you? A place called Tetbury, which is where the Arboretum, it's fantastic. I think I've mentioned the Arboretum before. It's a huge acreage of woodland. And the man who built it all is obviously not here, and he wouldn't have seen it come to fruition, because a lot of trees there, Japanese maples for instance, you just don't get them in this country. So he built this with a vision of it becoming a very beautiful place. And the village of Tetbury, I think that's where Prince Charles lives, I'm not sure, but it's a very small village, or town I suppose, and it's got so many tea shops because of course it's a place to go, especially in the autumn when the colours, the beautiful autumn colours, and it's quite a trek. I mean, it is quite expensive to go around. I used to go on my own quite a lot, but it's not a place to go to at weekends when it's so many coach loads of people. It's very, very muddy, and lots of dogs and kids, and they got an outdoor tea shop there. But when my daughter and I used to go, there was a place called Two Toads and the Wagon and Horses. Two Toads, we used to have our lunch there sometimes, and then go round Tetbury, I've forgotten where I am. They're all quite close to each other. I do miss it, honestly, living here in Lincolnshire. I haven't yet found those sort of places for a day out, and I do miss taking off and you know, putting the wellies on and trudging around the trees and having a lovely afternoon tea. A Wagon and Horses was a good one. Used to have these toasted tea cakes. Do you have those in the US? I don't know. Fat currant buns cut in half and buttered. Oh, bliss. And of course you have to have teapots. You don't have mugs for afternoon tea. You have to have teapots with cups and saucers, lace cloth. I don't know if these places exist so much now. I think it's all got a bit, you know, modernised, and it's, you know, plastic tables is much easier, but I think they are around. I think in the West Country, the Cotswolds particularly, is a place to go. These little tiny villages, and of course everyone loves afternoon tea in UK, no matter who they are, afternoon tea. And I'm good at doing afternoon tea. I don't make cakes these days, but I'm good at doing afternoon tea. I will never have tea in a mug. It has to be in a cup and saucer, and when somebody comes, which they don't much these days, but they used to come, I would, you know, have a little cloth, set the table, cups and saucers, teapot, make it very posh, and the tea has got to be fresh leaf tea, hasn't got to be tea bags, don't put tea bags. And there is a ritual. I mean, some of the hotels in London, I mean, what are they called? The Grosvenor, some of the huge hotels. There was a programme on television here recently about afternoon tea, and there are I think somebody just walks around London and afternoon tea walks on the internet. Worth looking up for a nice change of scenery. Some of the teas are £50 a head. That's a lot of money. I don't know what that would be in dollars, but that's a lot of money. But you do get very special cakes, very special little tiny sandwiches cut up in little bits. And flowers on the table, you know. It's Bath, another afternoon tea I must talk about. Bath, when I lived in Bristol, was about 12 miles away. I love Bath, ancient Roman city, and they have a place there, I think it's the Abbey, it's called the Abbey. No, there is an Abbey. I forget what the tea room's called nearby, something like that. Huge tea rooms, and you have a dais, what is somebody playing a violin and a piano in the background. And of course you have waitresses and so forth, and you sit there and have this wonderful afternoon tea. I've got a picture of me there with my peculiar man friend. And so all these occasions, I'm going through my memories at the moment because I'm feeling really missing my afternoon teas. You know, it's not the same sitting at home and having it, is it really? Even with a friend. So, and all the tea shops in here are closed down, as you know, hotels and so forth. But this is the thing with memories, isn't it? I think to slightly change the subjects. I know I never stop at 6 minutes. To change the subject slightly. Memories, I'm very good at that, and I have been lately. A lot of the memories have been coming at me, which is lovely. I don't have a lot of good memories. I've got lots of bad ones, which is a bit negative, I know, but the good ones are to capture them. Just logically it's difficult, but when they come out you think, oh gosh, I remember that, what a wonderful day that was, you know. And so these memories are coming at me, and I had one the other day which is unbelievable. I can remember my father, well, it was my father, he must have been holding me in his arms, looking out of a bay window in a house at the storm, explaining to me how to count between the thunder and the lightning. I couldn't have been much more than about 6 or 7 years old. Where did that come from? This amazing memory. Another memory of going to Nottingham in the Midlands, where was my hometown, and my grandparents, who were Canadian actually, so I'm part Canadian, and they built this bungalow, and once a year we had to go, my mother and my sister and I and a dog and so forth, 2 suitcases and whatever, travel up to Nottingham to visit my grandparents in this bungalow that they had built. And they had a lovely garden, and it was just a magical place for me. It was the only place I really felt I enjoyed and I was loved and cared for. Do you know what I mean? They were lovely people, my grandparents. And it came to me, I was sitting in my kitchen the other day, this is the bungalow, and I suddenly was transported back to the bungalow in Nottingham, and I must have been about 12 when I went on my own for a holiday. I can remember, I mean, I've written a story about this, but the detail that I could remember was absolutely incredible. And I thought, I'm sitting at a little table in my kitchen like my grandmother had, the cooker nearby that she had, I can see her sitting there now, next to this cooker, looking out of the window as I was at the birds. I thought, my gosh, talk about a history repeating itself. I mean, and I'm about the age that she was when I knew her. And I just shed tears actually, because it was such a happy moment for me, but also realising that really nothing changes. quite bizarre really, isn't it? And I sat there thinking about the bungalow and the times I'd had there, and it was just a beautiful moment really, and it's just beautiful. So these memories, I don't know, I've got lots of them. I can't talk about them now obviously, but that seemed relevant. She was very good at afternoon tea. I mean, we used to go out lots of places in Nottingham and the Midlands, Yorkshire particularly is very good at afternoon tea cakes and clotted cream. No, clotted cream is I think the West Country, down in South Devon. Devon is the southern part of England, and they do have traditional cream scones with jam on. And there was this dispute the other day on the television in the afternoon tea. Do you put the jam on first or the cream on first? I think it's more messy to put the cream on top of the jam, to be honest. But so there's always different stories of afternoon teas. I could probably write a book about it, couldn't I? So I wonder if that's perhaps enough for today. Let's have a look and see what time it is. Oh gosh, 13 minutes, I don't believe it. See how I can wrap it on. Anyway, my beloveds, I hope you enjoyed that. And just remember, God is pleasure. I think so many religions forget that, and I think God loves us to have a laugh, to have fun, and to enjoy ourselves in these very difficult times. Take care, dear ones. God bless. Bye.